I think we're good. I have my matcha. Listen to that. Yeah. Cheers. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel, and I'm coming at you from a different location here. I have some little friends in the back. Hey guys. I decided to film in what is known as our office slash spare bedroom, hence the bed. This is actually trundle. I love it. I kind of felt like sitting on the floor today. So for today's video, I figured we could get into what I read in March. I had a super good reading month. I'm really excited to talk about everything I read this month. I think I read 8 books. I think. We're gonna find out together, me and you. Okay, I just counted and I did in fact read 8 books this month. This past month rather. I was right. We started off strong with continuing my Legendborn cycle reread. Well, this was a first time read. I finally read Bloodmarked by Tracy Deonn, which is the second to Legendborn. Since I talked about this previously, I won't give you the synopsis, especially because most of this book includes a lot of spoilers. Spoiler alert for you, Bloodmarked spoilers right now. Bloodmarked is basically about what happens after Nick disappears at the end of Legendborn, and if you thought Legendborn was crazy, Bloodmarked, insane. Like, genuinely insane. And I think I said that in my last video too, because oh my god, I am absolutely obsessed with it though. I love Tracy Deonn so much, but she really needs to stop breaking my heart over and over again. I won't yap about this one too much because like I said, I talked about it more in my February video, so make sure you watch that if you want to hear more about the Legendborn cycle. But it is no surprise to anyone that I love this series. I'm very, very excited to get into Oathbound. I wish that the 4th one was already coming. Hey, no rush, Tracy Deonn. You take your time to craft as much as you need to, okay? Your excellence cannot be rushed. Speaking of breaking hearts, the second book I read in March was The Poppy War by Kuang. Yeah, I'm getting real sick of Kuang punching me in the gut like over and over again. Let me stand up, girl, please. At the time I am recording this, I am currently listening to The Dragon Republic. I think I'm like 35% of the way through. I'm quaking in my damn boots. I'm scared, okay? I'm frightened. I will not be led into a false sense of security. I have learned my lesson. This is like a different kind of hurt. Poppy War is a fantasy war story based off of the real history of China. We follow a girl named Rin who starts off this whole thing at like 15, I think. At the end of the Poppy War, she's like 18 or something, so I only assume she gets slightly older and older. She is a war orphan, dead set on getting out of her adoptive parents' opium-riddled house and like their business. She takes one of the most prestigious academic tests that they have in her country to get into this military academy called Sinagard, or Sinagard as the narrator starts saying in book 2 and 3 for some reason. I don't know why she switched up like that. It's a very elite military school. It's the most elite in the country of Nakan. She ends up passing with top scores, so she gets a free ride to Sinagard. Kuang is like an evil mastermind rubbing her hands together like a fly in her writing tower or wherever she writes from. This is such a horrific and devastating book. Series in general, honestly. It's so beautiful and multifaceted. I will say the beginning is a little meandering. She is in school for a bit, but if you can't handle getting to know Kuang's characters very intimately, then she definitely isn't like a writer for you. If you're not someone who really likes character-driven stories, or if you're not a fan of just like being able to really be in these characters' minds, then I would not recommend this to you. I love that kind of thing. I'm going to put another major spoiler warning up on the screen. I need to tell you this anecdote about the Poppy War. At the very end, when Alton sets himself on fire and, you know, they commit war crimes, I was convinced that Alton wasn't actually dead. Like, I was like, oh, there's no way he's dead. There's no way. He's gonna come back in book 2. My hope was so, like, potent. I asked about, like, whether or not that was true and was told that that is, in fact, not true, and he really is dead and he's not coming back. Unless for some reason that changes in books 2 and 3 and my source was unreliable. That was like a devastating blow because I didn't even like properly mourn his death because I was so convinced he was coming back. This is an easy 5-star read. Like, R.F. Kuang, she has not failed me yet. Yellowface was like an interesting one. I still really liked it. It wasn't 5 stars, but she never fails to impress me. I'm already loving the Dragon Republic. It's a little faster paced so far, and I'm enjoying that, so I'm excited to continue, but she is one of my like instant buy authors. I need very little convincing to read whatever she's coming out with. Those of you who follow my Instagram saw I got the Arc of Catabasis, and I've been putting it off because I'm trying to savor it, but I do need to read that. Speaking of arcs, my next read is an arc I got from Penguin Random House through Edelweiss, which if you're not familiar with that, it's a website. I use it as a bookseller, and I have used it for years, so that's where I get a lot of my arcs. I read Where You're Planted by Melanie Sweeney, which is a romance novel coming out in July. I think it's July 8th of this year, so soon. I posted an in-depth review on my Instagram, so if you want a more articulate review, you can go check that out. I really loved this. Very much like a grumpy ex-sunshine romance, if that's your thing. I do enjoy that trope, so I had a great time with this. He is a librarian, and he's the director of the botanical garden that's like nearby her library branch. After they have a unfortunate like getting off on the wrong foot kind of meeting, he saves her during like this really massive hurricane that's ripping through their town in Texas. After all the wreckage from the hurricane, her library branch got flooded, so she has to work together with him and host a little pop-up library area in the botanical gardens while they wait on repairs for her branch. If you're looking for older main characters in romances, she has a daughter and they're both like 30, I think, something like that. I get asked for a lot of like not early 20s romance recommendations at work, so this is definitely one of those. This was another 5-star read for me, so we had a very, very strong start to the month. Honestly, strong month overall. I read some really good stuff. Keeping the 5-star streak going, I finally ventured into the Hannah Bonam-Young area and read Out of the Woods. Technically, I should have read Out on a Limb first because they're interconnected standalones, but I was waiting for that to become available from the library or for it to come into my work, whichever happened first, and it came into my work, so I did buy that. It's on my April TBR, so I'm ready to get into it because I absolutely adored this. I'm actually obsessed with Hannah Bonam-Young. I love her so much. Her writing style reminds me a lot of Cara Stone, who wrote Promise Me Sunshine and also Ready or Not, both of which I also adored, so they kind of remind me of each other in their author voices and in their wit, mostly in their like humor. Out of the Woods is a sort of second chance romance. They are a married couple who are having a bit of a hard time in their relationship, so they decide to go on a wilderness retreat in order to kind of revitalize some of their romance. The female main character, who is named Sarah, is dealing with a lot of unresolved grief from her mother's passing. We also get this really cool dual timeline of Sarah and Caleb when they had met each other and started dating in high school versus like the current day. I cannot wait to read the rest of her books. If I had like no TBR goals, I would just say it and read all of her stuff. But I do have book clubs I have to read for. Okay, my next read was another romance called Cleat Cute by Meryl Wilsner, I think is her last name. This is not my first venture into her books. I also read Mistakes Were Made, I think is what it's called, which I thought was alright. It was entertaining, and I had similar thoughts about Cleat Cute. It's about 2 soccer players, one of which is like 4 years younger than the other main character. She has this huge crush on this very famous soccer player named Grace. Their team is gearing up for the World Cup, and Phoebe, the other main character, has just like joined it. It takes place in New Orleans, which is very cool. I can't think of like many books that take place in New Orleans besides Phantasma, which I read recently. I love a good sports romance, and I love a good queer sports romance. This definitely scratched the itch it needed to. I read it right after going to a women's soccer game, like in person, so I was like, oh, I think it's time to read Cleat Cute. This sits at like a 3.5 for me. Like I said, it scratched the itch, but it didn't really stand out to me. It was anything special. I thought the conflict was a little silly, and the way they navigated it was also a little annoying. I had some qualms with just like their character choices, and there was this like running joke that they mentioned at the very end that like there was such a miscommunication that they didn't even know Grace didn't even know that they were together, like in a relationship, but Phoebe thought they were the whole time, which is just so I'm like, I don't know, I didn't like it. Overall, I enjoyed the book. Like I said, I thought it was very entertaining, so It was just what I needed at the time. Next up, I read Fan Service by Rosie Danan. If you loved Supernatural, if you loved The Vampire Diaries, if you loved literally anything and you were part of a fandom on Tumblr, this calls you out. Me included, so I'll see you there. This is a paranormal romance, rom-com, if you will, about a girl named Alex Lawson, who is known online for her creation of this like forum, or this like wiki, I think is what they say, for this TV show that her and other people are super obsessed with, called The Arcane Files. Particularly has a huge crush on the lead in the show, who is named Devin Ashwood. He plays the super well-loved, handsome werewolf detective in it. She ends up having an opportunity to actually meet him in person at like a convention that's coming to her area, and after she meets him, they unfortunately have a falling out, isn't the right word? They have a bad interaction, and she swears to hate him for the rest of her life. Until years later, after the show has been canceled, he is experiencing some werewolf-ish symptoms and he's very confused over them. So he comes upon the forum that Alex had made and seeks her out to see if she can help him. I thought this was so much fun. I really enjoyed it. I listened to the audiobook of this one and I liked both of the narrators. I gave this 4 stars, I think, just because I thought Devin was a little bit of a douche sometimes, but he got better. This is based in Ocala, Florida, which is so funny because if you're from Florida, you gawk at like the idea of a book being placed in Ocala, because it's like you either have to be from here or from that area to know anything about Ocala. Such a unique location, I guess. Like I had mentioned, I thought Devin was a little douchey at first, but he definitely does get better and is more of like a himbo at times. Alex, flawless. I'm in love with her. She is so funny and so cool, and I want to be her friend. And both the narrators were really good, so that made for a good story. Okay, my next read is kind of like a complete 360 from all the romances that I read. I read this and the one after it for the Trans Rights Readathon, which again I covered on my Instagram. I read Freshwater by Akwaeke Emezi, I think is how you say their last name. If I'm butchering that, I apologize. Freshwater is such a uniquely profound novel. I am so glad I read this. This was also their debut, which I think is crazy. What an intense and strong debut novel to put out there. I'm gonna pull this description from Goodreads because I think it sums it up pretty well, better than I could articulate. Freshwater explores the surreal experience of having a fractured self. It centers around a young Nigerian woman. Ada is how I read it, but I think in the audiobook it's said Ada. So Ada, who develops separate selves within her as a result of being born with one foot on the other side. Unsettling, heart-wrenching, dark, and powerful, Freshwater is a sharp evocation of a rare way of experiencing the world, one that illuminates how we all construct our identities. This was so interesting and such a unique story. I feel like this may be a really good representation of like personality disorders, said in lesser terms. I don't know if the author has explicitly been like, this is my narrative on personality disorders. This was really interesting, utilizing Nigerian folklore and like Nigerian gods to integrate representations of separate selves was a really unique touch. I will say it was a little hard to get into in the very beginning just because I didn't have a good grasp on what was happening. Maybe if I was listening to the audiobook that would have been a little bit easier, but I didn't listen to the audiobook, I read it on my Kindle. I think Freshwater is very powerful and very thought-provoking, gorgeously written. I think the author has such a talent for beautiful writing. It also obviously has queer and trans representation, or more so gender non-conformity representation, maybe. This was truly unlike anything I have read before. It's really hard to like talk about this book and review it. I honestly just think everyone should read it. I think you should read it if you're watching this. Perhaps another word is imaginative. I think it was rather imaginative. It pushes a lot of boundaries, which I enjoyed. The final book I read in March was Detransition Baby by Torrey Peters. Detransition Baby revolves around really 3 characters, but technically 2, named Reese and Ames. Reese is a trans woman. Ames is her former ex-girlfriend, now detransitioned back into a man, who goes by Ames, but when he was trans, she went by Amy. Reese has really wanted a child for quite a while. Ames accidentally gets a woman at his office pregnant and then approaches Reese with this crazy plan to raise the baby together as like a non-conventional family of 3. That like proposition is so wild to me. I remember listening to it and being like, who would agree to this? Like, this is crazy. Obviously, you know, there are many different kinds of families, but just the way he went about approaching Reese, and I can't remember her name, but the woman, his partner, was just like, ladies, like, stand up. This is crazy. The author does a really excellent job of navigating different kind of taboos and stereotypes around sex and gender identity and expression, as well as relationships and conventional family ideas. It makes for a very witty and at times profound novel. This allowed me to shift my perspective and really explore ideas of transness, but specifically trans women and the things they go through. I saw a review say this on Goodreads, and I really agree with that. I feel like Torrey Peters, the author, didn't write this book for cis people. This was like a book for trans people. They weren't holding your hand as you go through reading this, explaining the ideas of transness to you. It also talks a lot about motherhood and femininity in a way that I had never heard before or never considered before. It is unique in the way that it's so specific to being a trans woman, and I think that's very valuable. I really enjoyed this book, and I've been meaning to read it for a while, and I've only heard good things, so I'm going to add to the barrage of good things and say you should read this, and I think it's a really good audiobook too. Okay, and that is everything I read for the month of March. I feel really good about everything I read in March. I didn't like dislike anything. I have some new favorites. I really enjoyed everything I read for the Trans Rights Readathon. I'm really happy with what I picked. Anyway, that is everything I have for today's video. If you'd like to see more from me, make sure you like, subscribe. Besides that, I will see you guys next time.